As artificial intelligence rapidly transforms industries and unlocks game-changing capabilities, business leaders can't afford to sit on the sidelines. Even if you're still figuring out exactly how AI is going to fit into your organization, it's critical to start developing an informed perspective now. Well, the research report from Worldwide Technology, Secure Your Future, a CISO's Guide to AI, makes it clear that AI governance isn't a nice to have. It needs to be a core pillar of your security and data governance programs going forward. The stakes are simply too high to leave AI unchecked. But this same report also lays out what you can do about it, how CISOs and their security teams play a pivotal lead role in AI governance. Embrace AI governance now, and you'll be able to confidently use AI as a strategic advantage. Ignore it, and you may be left behind, or worse, blindsided by unintended consequences. The time for action is now. No matter where you are on the adoption curve, you can start taking meaningful steps to put AI governance in place. In fact, that's what we're going to do. Stay with us. Angela Brandt joins us as we discuss establishing your AI stance, bringing the right people to the table, and mapping out a prioritized game plan. Prioritized. You know what I'm trying to say. Lean into the AI revolution with intention, and you'll be on track to securely unlock its benefits. Welcome to WWT Presents Research.
WWT Presents Research.
I've been looking forward to this conversation on governance ever since I first met you, but you're relatively new to Worldwide Technology. So for anyone that may not be familiar with you from your past or your current timeframes, tell us what you do for Worldwide and how did you end up here?
Absolutely. I am reasonably new to Worldwide. I joined in October of last year, so October of 2023. I'd actually come from a few years with a smaller niche product company in the cybersecurity space. Prior to that, I spent a lot of years at a very large technology company, and I was really excited to get back to a company with the size and scope and breadth and depth that Worldwide has.
How did you get into the security space? Because I don't believe you started doing what you're doing now in your career. I didn't either. I started in the hotel management side of things 30 plus years ago. No need to share dates, but when did you change? What changed you into cybersecurity?
It's true. I did get involved in technology a long time ago, before cybersecurity was really even a consideration for the industry. I originally worked in a sort of support role, helping customers in my organization with their technology implementations. I was a network administrator at a credit union for a while. And it was during that time that the Melissa virus hit. And we all of us said, whoa, what just happened? This is new. This is novel. It's had an impact that made all of us stop in our tracks and realize that we were going to have to start thinking differently about what's allowed with technology, how we use technology, who we allow to use technology, how we secure it, how we keep the right people in and the right people out, or the right connections in and the right connections out. You know, if you want to take the human out and think about it, machine to machine connection.
Yeah.
It was a real moment that changed the direction, not just for the industry, but also for me personally in my career. And I realized that I love to solve problems. I like to build solutions, and ultimately securing an organization's assets and making them more secure so they can deliver secure outcomes to their customers is where I wanted to be. And I pivoted my career at that point, and I said, how can I be more helpful to these places, delivering their business outcome? I know we tend to get really techie in this space. I know some of us kind of geek out in the cyber.
You got to name names. Okay, sure. Yeah, that happens.
Yeah, no. If you geek out, you know who you are, right?
Yeah.
But for me, there's a little bit of that geek, and there's a lot of the business that says, what are the business outcomes that every organization is trying to deliver to their stakeholders, to their customers?
Well, let me ask you this. So everything we're talking about today is based off the research paper specifically called on Worldwide's platform, Secure Your Future, a CISO's Guide to AI. So on one hand, I was thinking about this and I was going, it's interesting that it's a CISO's guide to AI, because I'm going to ask you about who should be leading the charge here. And I think there's obviously an implication there that that's in the title. So maybe that's part of the answer, but I don't think that's the entire answer. But it also talks about securing your future, because it kind of separated the notion of security and AI, because we could have a deep conversation about AI without ever touching on security, unfortunately. But AI feels like a much different thing to impact more than just security. But our conversation today is around security, and specifically within this document, which is a massive document. We're not going to cover all of it. We're going to specifically talk about governance, and that's why you're here. But first, how do you describe why it's important to think about security and AI just off the top?
We can't afford not to. AI is here, and it's actually all around us already. To get AI right and to make it useful, which is ultimately what we all would like out of it, it relies on massive amounts of data. And security is about ensuring that the right people have the right access, the right thing at the right time. Just being very basic about it. When you have something like AI that relies on such a vast amount of data consolidated into sort of one body of material, it first and foremost sort of strips away one of the original tenets of cybersecurity, which is separation of data, least privilege, like only ensuring that the right people have the right when they need it, and nothing else. Well, now, in order for AI to be successful and to be useful, it needs access to everything. So we have a new problem that we're solving for here, and it's worth solving for, because the work that AI can do for us is it's going to be like that Melissa virus. It's going to change the game. It's going to change the way we interact with technology and the way we work and the way we achieve our outcomes. But we need to think differently about how we secure that at the same time, because it is changing the way we leverage the material that is behind the scenes.
The way and I'm not even happy with where I've landed on this yet, but I was trying to think of it, and the only word I'm so far comfortable with is thinking of AI as an accelerant, in the sense that, because we tend to always want to throw things in as this is the new, we're talking about SASE or SASE or some other acronym or whatever the hype cycle we're on in any given technology area. And it can be, it's kind of muscle reaction for us to throw AI into that category. But I think that would be missing the reason why it needs to be taken as seriously as it does, because it doesn't just affect one area. It's not a technology. It's very much a whole paradigm shift in terms of how it makes everything else better, but it enables everybody equally to a certain extent, those who are leveraging it. And so I feel like we need to pay attention to it. And thus this document that we are basing this conversation of, one of the big things that comes out of this, and it felt like topic 5 was really where we wanted to go. And I numbered them. They're actually not numbered in the document, but it's the 5th one down. And it's about security and AI around governance. And I think I had a little bit of a misnomer even around the word governance and what that meant. I'm curious if you could define governance as it's important to this conversation. What do we mean by governance?
Governance is applicable to this conversation, but it's broader than just this conversation. So governance is really about having an established position on your desired outcomes with AI or security or what have you. So you need to establish that position. You need to make sure that that position is communicated out to all of the people that are impacted. And then you need to be able to measure the progression against that position. So it all starts with having an opinion, an informed opinion about what's right for you, what's right for your organization. When it comes to AI, and we've been doing this in security for a long time now, having an established position in cybersecurity is essentially like saying, what is our risk posture? What are we going to accept versus what are we going to mitigate versus what are we going to transfer? And then deciding how we're going to secure ourselves to those goals. With AI, it's a very similar thing. Are we going to use it? What risk does it represent to our organization? How are we going to secure it? How are we going to reduce the risk associated with using AI? everyone can make a lot of arguments about why AI is going to be a change agent in your organization, the type of activity that you're going to get out of AI, the type of value you're going to get from adopting AI. But before you start to lean into that, or maybe if you've already begun to lean into that and you're thinking to yourself, okay, maybe I need to pause and step back and say, what is my opinion of AI? What do I want to allow? Who should be allowed to use this? How should it be allowed to be used within my environment? What risks is it representing? And then how am I going to measure my adoption against my intended position? So it kind of comes back to that original intent. What is your
Yeah.
intent? And how are you going to monitor and measure the usage against that intent? Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I'm thinking, okay, so on one hand, governance is about having an opinion about what is our stance on something in the company, and you say it's unique to the risk of that company. So contextually, risk and your response to dealing with that risk, as you mentioned, some of the common ways to deal with risk, you can reduce it, you can give it away, or reassign it, but you have to do something with it, which
Mhm.
means acknowledging that it exists and knowing that it exists. In the same way, it feels like you're saying, okay, you need to have an opinion on AI in your organization. And that, of course, opens up a whole lot of additional questions. But let me ask you, because you deal with customers on a regular basis and you probably are having these conversations. Can I assume that you've had customers that are saying, we're taking a wait and see approach? That's our stance. Or, it's too much too soon. We're busy with other things, that kind of thing, versus someone else who's going after potential use cases that they're fired up about in various business units. How does the advice differ, if assuming it does, or what's important to understand between those extremes?
Sure. Um, it seems like every conversation I'm having is with a different organization in a different industry, and they are all having this conversation, which is amazing to see. And they're all in a different place. Think of this as a trajectory. Think of it as a sort of a range going from nothing at all to ultra adoption, right? And there are some organizations who are more risk averse organizations who may be more highly regulated organizations where they've got laws, rules, and regulations that limit what they can and can't do because of the risk to their stakeholders. So some of those organizations are taking a more risk-averse approach. They're not saying no, but they're going slowly into this. We saw a similar adoption trajectory with cloud about 15, now almost 20 years ago, when cloud was new,
Yeah.
offered a lot of transformative activities and capabilities. Some organizations raced right in and were early adopters and said, the heck with worrying about it. We're going to figure that out when we get there. Others said, let's go a little slower. And yet others said, we're not going there at all until things are more mature. We're having the exact same conversation on the topic of AI, but it is moving faster, a lot faster. The organizations who were wait and see organizations when we were in sort of a cloud conversation are now we're dipping a toe organization. Some of them that we talk to on a pretty regular basis, they're saying, no, not yet. We're blocking access to any and all AI related activity. Whereas shockingly, that's the fewest that I'm talking to. And I was expecting more of them to be in this, nope, we're blocking access. Now let's sit down and build a roadmap to adoption so that we can do it safely and securely. But shockingly, a lot of them are already dipping toes with
Yeah.
far fewer than expected blocking access and blocking adoption. So it's moving very fast, and there's a whole range of adoption activities taking place.
Do they really know if they're blocking it successfully? Because that seems like part of the governance says, well, if our decision is to block it at this stage, then I heard you say earlier, it was like, well, how are we monitoring to know that we're executing against the things that we believe in? And because I feel like this is one of those things where it's not as simple as blocking access to a couple of big cloud sites or providers. This is much more sneaky, so
Yeah,
to speak. Do you agree?
I do. I do agree. This is hard. There are certain things you can block in terms of usage from corporate owned machines.
Yeah.
But here's the problem in cybersecurity that has always been a challenge and probably always will be, and that is the human. And the human layer can be the hardest layer of the stack to secure because humans are incredibly creative, and we as humans are are really focused on our outcomes. We're really driven to arrive at that outcome that we set ourselves. So if there's an individual who's motivated within your organization, um, they won't be doing this for nefarious reasons, and they won't be doing this because they, are trying to do something wrong. They're really excited about adopting this new capability. And if you haven't tried any of the AI capabilities yet, you're really missing out. Everybody should be trying this at this point.
Yeah.
Um, and it is fascinating and amazing what it is capable of. Um, so everyone should be trying it, but the humans are adopting very quickly, and there's only so much you can do to block that. So, for instance, let's say for a minute that you've blocked access to ChatGPT, right? It's a website that you can go to and interact with ChatGPT. You can block that, but what you can't do is block your human from taking that same material or that same information and going home to their home PC and doing the same thing that they would have done on your corporate PC. And you can't block
No,
that.
not to mention the fact that ChatGPT itself, how many companies have been spawned using the APIs behind the scenes to where it's like, and it already was the case. I don't think we realized how much AI was happening behind the scenes anyway, but it's only accelerated. And I feel like it's sneaking. It's like, because every company has an incentive, in our whole ecosystem of supply, in the supply chain that makes up whatever it takes to get our business done in our own industries is made up of third-party companies that are using AI to some degree, whether they actually spell it out and brand it as such or not. And it may or may not be a model that we would say is up to the risk expectations of our company. And it feels like, here we go back again, right back to your point of you need a governance policy. What scares me is that I feel like governance and security is something we've been talking about for a long time. And every company I've ever worked with, even the best ones, always had some degree of security they were looking to get better at, because it's a game. It's a constant, working forward. But now all of a sudden, you still have all that same security. Your SQL attacks and all these kind of things don't go away. You still have all these humans giving out information on the phone with the right charming person that asks that we ever had before. But now it's all accelerated with AI, which instead of being another level of something to learn, it feels like it's as I mentioned earlier, an accelerator or a chaos machine, that's kind of come in and go, well, let's just make all this 8 times as fast, before we've had a chance for even government regulation, which is struggling to keep up, have a chance to come in here and help us establish our own guardrails. So it sounds like from a timing perspective, you're saying, regardless of where you are on this AI journey, you need to be thinking about this now.
Absolutely.
You agree with that timing wise?
I do.
Why is it important? Why is the timing important? Why can't I do what you mentioned earlier? Is it bad to block and then try to execute? Is that a viable policy? Or maybe that is the policy.
AI is going to change business. It's going to change business outcomes. It's going to change the speed of business. It's going to be a differentiator for a lot of markets. Um, it's going to accelerate, to your point, love the word. AI is an accelerator. It absolutely is. There's a lot of reason to adopt and use AI. There's a lot of good reason for this.
Mhm.
It should not be considered scary. It should not be considered something that we should be overly worried about to the point of shutting it down. What we should be doing is recognizing the value that AI is capable of producing and then adopting it securely and safely. I don't think that organizations should be shutting it down completely.
Okay.
I believe that they should be experimenting with it safely. They should be considering what use cases are useful for them in their industries. To your point, there are a lot already using it inside of third-party applications. Like there are a lot of call centers in the world already using AI. There are chatbots all around us. There are a lot of AI usage already in play. So I think that if businesses are going to remain competitive in their spaces, they're going to want to adopt it. If you're going to adopt it, you should do that with your eyes wide open, with well thought through and reasoned approaches. Um, why are you adopting it? What are you attempting to achieve with it? Like, let's just, very basically, they should have
Yeah.
some ideas around that. Then you bring in the security conversation around it that says, like, now that we're saying to ourselves, yeah, let's go ahead and dip a toe in these waters. Um, we need to put the framework around it. We need to say, what is our existing governance practice within our organization? Can we take that existing governance practice and expand it to include AI now? We're not suggesting that anybody create anything brand new. You
Yeah.
have existing governance.
There's an assumption there's a security governance in place, perhaps data governance.
Yes,
Or maybe they're melded together probably in some way.
absolutely.
Well,
These practices already exist. This is a matter of expanding the vision, expanding what's inside the governance practice. Now, there'll be some nuances. There'll be some specifics to AI. In AI does present some new areas that we need to be cautious of. The models being what they are, the way they function, the safety associated with AI, and a lot of that depends on your use cases, what you're using AI for. So again, starts out, what are you going to use it for? How do you need to measure that, right? And then just understand the right set of capabilities that you bring around that governance practice to ensure that AI is doing for you what you are expecting it to do for you. And that is the governance of it. I know I'm really high level with that
no.
description, but adopt it into what you already have in terms of your
Yeah.
governance practices and just expand that topic out.
Well, so in the document, we talk about building an AI security and governance program. It's about 5 topics in as I was counting. I don't know how accurate that is. And I don't think these are in a particular order, but there's quite a few specific things when it comes to what are you doing to build a program. And I found this helpful for kind of almost thinking about this as a checklist, but I wanted to get some color from you on it. And the very first one, and it sounds like a great one to start with, is AI COE, or Center of Excellence. What does it mean to have a center of excellence around AI specifically? Are there other COEs perhaps that would be combined with, to your point of security governance? But what's important there?
Yeah, I think it's pretty important to have an AI COE specifically. I think the guidance in the document is spot on. And a number of the organizations that we've talked to, a number of the customers that we're doing some AI related work with, I was really pleased to hear that they had already established an AI COE, which is fantastic. We had started having some conversations with some security specific individuals, some of our security specific contacts. And we were having this conversation about the value of a center of excellence. And they were going down the path to say, yeah, let's build that because we see the value of bringing these different stakeholders together from across the business. AI is going to touch every part of the business. And you need all of those stakeholders at the table to ensure that your AI is being adopted, not just securely, but also safely. And safety is a topic within AI that is completely separate from security, and will have a lot of impacts in terms of human life and safety
Wow.
for certain use cases. So there's a lot more to the topic of AI than just cybersecurity. So we absolutely recommend having a COE and bringing all of those stakeholders to the table, including cybersecurity, to ensure that those outcomes are realized. At that customer I was referring to, once they were starting to go down the path through this cyber team, they actually learned that an AI COE had been stood up at the corporate layer, and they were joined in. So that was a great outcome for them, and exactly what we would hope to happen.
Was there a little bit of alarm in the back of your head, whether you mentioned it out loud or not, that, well, I kind of wish you guys had known about each other already, because that was kind of the key point of communicating effectively? Because we say that in security, and that it's always the weak link in the chain. The attacker only has to find one way in, that kind of thing. We have to protect everything. But the same principles apply in the AI side, is that this really has to extend throughout the entire organization. And accelerating through the list here, we talk about AI security governance. The second one, you've already mentioned how important it is to think of this as an extension to something that should already be in place, not as a whole cloth new team, different people maybe competing with each other. Certainly not. On roles and responsibilities, the paper is obviously targeting CISOs or the C-suite at the very least. But what recommendation would you have about who should be in charge and who should be involved? Any quick hits on that?
CISOs are going to be front and center with AI adoption largely because of the cybersecurity impact that this is going to have. Every organization's mileage may vary a little bit, right? But CISOs are, if not at the front edge of this, certainly hand in hand with their CIOs and the other leadership in the C-suite, determining the right levels of adoption, the correct approach that the organization takes to using AI for the right purposes, and then securing it and using it safely and securely. So CISOs, I think, have an outsized influence on the topic because of the security impact that AI usage can really have in their cybersecurity space.
I feel like this could be an opportunity, just talking about the big sea change, if you will, that AI is introducing to us, and that we're figuring out in real time as we all go through it. But I think you use the term CISOs being in charge of adoption. And I think a lot of people don't think of CISOs being in charge of adoption. They think of it as the Department of No, in a lot of experiences, which is a reflection of the culture, right, in that organization. Because I think we've been preaching and encouraging and trying to showcase organizations that have gotten to the point where security is in the boardroom, helping enable the business, which is really what I think you're referring to. But I wonder if there is a little bit of a shift there, because point number 4 on the list is culture of awareness. And I think culture is the only way in which you're going to get any type of comprehensive coverage of, what is the governance program? What does that mean to you in your job in terms of the decisions you make, the things you say yes or no to, the things you experiment with? What does it mean to be our corporate citizen? That kind of thing.
Yeah, the CISOs will have an opportunity to make a difference, without question. They can be very influential here. Cybersecurity has, to your point, had a reputation for being the Department of No. Cybersecurity, you think about like DevSecOps, right? Take a slightly different topic for a minute to make an illustration. Development and operation, there's long been this partnership between developers and ops to accelerate through the development of code, application to application interaction. Well, you hear DevSecOps, where you insert security in between development and operations. And when developers hear that, they all cringe. They're like, oh, you're just going to slow me down, or you're not going to let me do certain things that would be great. Like, how amazing would it be if I could do all these things? You're going to tell me no. And so there's been this push and pull between security and everyone else in the organization for a long time. And for good reason. If you get security wrong, some pretty impactful things can happen, and not good impactful things. If you get it right, you don't usually even get any acknowledgement because things are going well. So nobody even realizes that security is working well because there's no big fireworks going off, right? That's what you want. So with AI, it's very similar here, where security can be an enabler. Security teams, and CISOs specifically, can be influential in the adoption of AI because they should recognize that the company should want to do that. The company should want to adopt AI. The company should want to be transformed and move into a future that is AI enabled, that's going to be impactful for the company as they innovate and stay competitive in their field. And security can be part of that innovation if they start at the beginning, and if they get in there and get involved and do something, step into that arena, establish your position, understand what you're willing to adopt and how you're going to adopt it, and begin having those conversations across your business. Be the Department of Sure, let's explore that rather than the
Yeah.
Department of no.
Well, and I think it's helpful to remember, because hopefully I will have had this in the open already, kind of setting it up. But I like the fact that at the top of this very paper, one thing that's reinforced, and it's all over Worldwide Technologies, if you will, documentation around AI and security. But it's the notion that there's three pillars to AI to consider when it comes to security. There's security of your AI models, which is for those people who are doing AI development and internal. Maybe it's just RAG models. Sorry, not to get into that, but maybe it's models, that they're doing internally on their own data because they are looking to say, how do we accelerate this? Well, you got to think about security in that. Then there's security of your AI usage, which is most of what we've been talking today about. How is it sneaking into the organization at all degrees? And we'll go through those details. And then there's securing with AI, which is kind of using the fact that everything is now moving at a pace that we cannot battle the new threats, and the new risks can't be dealt with without also using AI to actually deal with AI, which can be kind of a mind mess up. But I just wanted to make sure that we'd covered that at the very least, because everybody could be thinking about this differently as we give these examples. And the biggest thing is, I'm assuming if someone is, I would hope someone is already accelerated on governance if they're doing their own internal model building. But I would also find out if your employees are doing their own models, because there are models that can run on your own machines.
Yeah.
They're not going to get as far. They're not going to chunk as much data. And hopefully you've got, good control over your data internally, that they're not running it on your data. But who knows? Hopefully, that's part of having a governance program in place, saying, well, how would we know? What's our opinion on this, right? And what
Right.
action would we take? Okay. I like that. So it gets into, I want to bring up again, so we talk about data governance in this list. I'm jumping now further down on the list, but supply chain. I brought this up earlier because I think that's always been a difficult one for people to understand, because we've had so many threats where something came in because there's an assumption of trust to certain suppliers that you've had forever. And that assumption of trust has burned many companies. And AI is certainly already a part of that now. But are you seeing an increase in intelligence about being willing to approach and say, look, we've got to hold all of our vendors. If they have access to our data, we need them at a minimum level of sharing or something, correct?
It's an essential activity that the cybersecurity teams should be taking on with regards to AI adoption. Your organization is probably already getting the benefit of AI through some of your third-party providers. So this is a supply chain topic. And in fact, in certain regulated industries, like financials, as a matter of fact, the regulators this year are particularly focused on third and fourth party risk. Every year they've got a different topic, it seems, that they're focused on. Last year they were heavily focused on cloud. This year they are really leaning hard into third and fourth party risk. And that AI really is sort of in that mix relative to supply chain concern. Like all cybersecurity concerns, you really should know what you're using today, right? And this is one of the conversations that we often have with some of our customers when they come to us and we start exploring the topic of AI. What are you using today? Are you using anything at all? Like, to start that governance conversation, let's start with an inventory of your usage. That, to your point, could be internal, relative to some of their employees already working with some internal model in a shadow AI kind of way.
Yeah.
It might be your third-party vendors, your suppliers that are using it to deliver to you. And yes, that's a risk that you take on. So you should definitely be thinking about supply chain when it comes to AI, because everyone is adopting it. It's a game changer. It's happening all around us, and it's happening to you in your supply chain too.
Out of this list of steps to take, again, it doesn't say that they're in a very particular order, but the first one is AI COE, establishing the center of excellence, and then a bunch of good details that follow between that. And then the very last item on this list is implementation prioritization. So it says to me, hey, here's a bunch of things you need to be considering before you're even beginning to prioritize exactly what you're going to take advantage of with AI, because you're not ready to do it safely. Any comments on that in terms of is that, you think that was I know you didn't write this paper, but this is your organization, so you have to back them up. Do you agree that that's maybe an intentional point, that's way down the list?
It's good guidance, because it basically says yes, there are a number of activities and actions that you should take now, and you should also develop a prioritized list. Like, don't forget to do that. Don't just throw the doors open and come what may. Really think what we're trying to say here is be intentional. Develop a roadmap. Know what you're attempting to accomplish, and then monitor and measure that. And having an implementation prioritization, having that kind of a roadmap helps ensure that you go back and align to your intention that you set out within your governance program. There have been a lot of conversations lately amongst my peers, with customers, with a variety of folks about where do you start?
Yeah.
Because this implementation prioritization, like to your point, like it's at the end of the list. That's okay. Every organization is on a slightly different trajectory, on a slightly
Yeah.
different journey, and their starting point is going to be a little bit different from everyone around them. So they need to. We say it all the time. We're going to meet you where you are. There are a series of good practices. No matter what else you do, you must start wrapping some governance capabilities around the topic of AI. Get those things at least started so that you are having conversations within your organization, within the teams that are impacted, so that you can begin to grow this. And then
Yeah.
eventually there are a lot of additional steps that you should be taking, and ultimately managing the usage of this like you would manage the usage of any other technology that's coming your way.
I just always shudder when I think about large organizations that have, because it's always been that challenge is how do you get everybody down to the janitorial level? And we've talked on this show about how important even the janitor can be to understanding what your security priorities are and things. Now, it may need to only be in conjunction with the stuff that they interact with, but they're going to be a weak point if they're not educated and a part of it. So there cannot be any assumed trust. And we have to really assume that everything is happening much faster than we think it is,
Yeah.
and is much more important maybe than we think it is, because that's the only way we're going to maybe put the right energy behind it. What's most important to remember, and where, because especially you've been so engaged with customers, I could imagine there are going to be people that want to work with you, certainly people on your team, because I know you represent a lot of smart people. But what's most important to remember coming out of this, and what kind of advice would you want to give?
I really think the most important thing is to do something. I think I mentioned it earlier. Don't bury your head in the sand. To use an old example, an old phrase, like don't bury your head in the sand. AI is coming. It's here. Let's call it. It's here.
Yeah.
So do something. Lean into it, and take real action, even if it's small steps forward. Take real action to understand and define your own posture, define your own expectations around the usage and adoption of it. It doesn't have to be a lot. It can be a step in that direction. And when you begin to have those conversations, doors are going to open, and you're going to think about this differently. You're going to think about how this can impact and improve your organization differently. Just do something. Get started on the journey. And, being here at Worldwide, I'm just thrilled because we have so many people, processes, and technologies that we can help our customers with building toward and taking those steps forward as they begin and accelerate their journey.
Yeah, and I can't go without saying you started this off at the very beginning of saying you've been focused since the beginning of your career shift into cybersecurity, that it's about the outcomes. This is such an easily distractible technology set as well, because it is so exciting. And there's so many wonderful things it can do for us, but we've got to be careful, as we can't ignore it, but yet we also can't not play. We've got to get involved and have an opinion, as you said. Well, Angela, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Rob. It's been a pleasure.
Well, there you have it. A huge thank you to Angela Brandt for sharing her insights and expertise with us today. Be sure to check out the full WWT report, Secure Your Future, a CISO's Guide to AI, for even more actionable guidance on building your AI governance program. Whether you're just starting to dip your toes in the water or already waist deep in AI initiatives, remember, governance is key. Embrace AI with intention now, and you'll be well positioned to harness its potential securely. Thanks for tuning into this episode of WWT Presents Research. Until next time, I'm Rob Boyd.
This episode is brought to you by CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike is redefining security with the world's most advanced cloud-native platform that protects and enables the people, processes, and technologies that drive modern enterprise.